Hello, and welcome to the Dad and Buried podcast. My name is Mike, a.k.a. Dad and Buried, and I am here with my co-host, Pete.
What? It's
People
me,
can't see
everybody.
you.
It's
Step
me,
back.
the founder of the internet. That's right.
You don't even
Thanks.
go on the internet.
No, well, I wrote the speech about the tubes on the Senate floor, so House of Representatives.
Hell of a speech, Pete.
Yeah,
Really,
and I also told Al Gore that he should just take credit for it. You know what I mean?
you know what? So you're part of the problem. You're part of the problem.
Am
Spreading
I, Mike, or
misinformation, fake
oh,
news.
really? Or
Yeah.
was it my heroism when I stood up in 2007 and said, I'm not going to be part of Facebook, and everyone shunned me for a long part of time, which is another way of saying
Yeah,
for a long
still
time.
going on, actually.
Yeah. But then, thankfully, the Republic of Fiji,
Lost the thread. There was no thread. to
they
begin with.
basically came out and they said that they're also banning Facebook these days.
So you are now comparing yourself to the government of
Yes,
Fiji in
that's
that you decided to do Facebook just like, and they followed your lead.
Yeah,
10, 13
absolutely.
years later,
Yep.
They were like, I like what that Pete guy does, even though I don't know who he is because he has no digital footprint because he's not on social media. Never heard of him, never will.
And that's why we should do it.
Anyway, so today we are back. It is Thanksgiving week. Thanksgiving is in a couple of days. It's not going to look like any Thanksgiving's past, just like in A Thanksgiving Carol with Scrooge, right? That's what that's about.
Yeah.
The ghost of Thanksgiving's past.
Exactly.
So we thought that we would lighten things up and talk about the state of education today.
Yay!
what parents are looking for, what they think. So Pete and I both have. So Pete has a daughter entering high school. I have a son, and you have a daughter both entering middle school. And we both have younger kids who are just sort of matriculating into the elementary school system.
Who we rarely talk about.
So we do really talk about. They're a lot less complicated. So we're facing some obstacles, and we have different expectations, or certainly than what our parents probably had for us a good 30 plus years ago. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. We got some nice, thoughtful responses from the crew.
You know why, Mike? You know why? Because education is really a hot button topic these days. You know why? Because what are we doing? If our kids can't be better than us, then what's this game that we're playing all about?
Well, for us, it's a very low bar, and it has little to do with education. Our kids are definitely better than us.
That's true, but at the same time, we want the best for our kids, and
Yes.
It's hard for us as parents to know what that bar is anymore, because when you look around, we'll get into it. I don't want to spoilers.
I want to step on your own thing here, but yeah, we have a lot to discuss. Before we get into that, we did want to talk briefly about the fact that it's Thanksgiving in 2 days, and we have almost literally nothing to be thankful for. In the end of 2020, thankful for
canceled Thanksgiving
coming to an end, and the Trump regime coming to an end, and hopefully at this point next year we won't have to be locked down anymore, but we'll see.
Yeah,
vaccine should be coming out soon.
Yep.
But maybe we do have some things to be thankful for, Pete. I'm thankful for your friendship.
I'm thankful for you, Mike. I'm thankful for the fact that you've got a very sharp-looking hat on for a change.
Oh, Dolphins,
it's
baby.
Not the Citgo hat that makes
Football
me want
season.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Well, good for you, man. And the Dolphins, they're trying. So you got that going for you.
First of all, I'm not going to take the condescension.
No, I'm not condescending to you, Mike.
They have a shot at the playoffs, and the future is bright. We will see where we are next week at this time even. Actually, they're playing the Jets, so we know where they'll be.
They'll be number one.
In the winner's circle. So, yeah. So we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll talk briefly, I think, about Thanksgiving's plans, if we have any. And then we're going to dive into the hell that is the American education system and how the hell we are planning for our kids' futures and where they're going to end up.
So don't touch that dial. It's about to get off.
Look, who knows? Look, they may end up in a classroom. They may go to high school and their teacher may come in and they may be like, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," and it could be the most touching relationship they've ever had, and that could change the whole trajectory of their lives. It has nothing to do with what we want for them.
At which point, the most touching relationship they might have in their lives might be the most, most lawsuits coming right after that.
So you're saying that Robin Williams in that movie was,
well,
like, they should do a spotlight. The Boston Globe should do a spotlight investigation on Robin Williams and Dead Poets Society.
Investigate it all is what I say.
Perhaps the most overrated movie of our lifetime. I really don't like Dead Poets Society.
Okay, there we go. There you have it.
And we're going to talk more about Robin Williams and Dead Poets Society right after this. All right, welcome back to the Damnit podcast. We're going to talk about the depressing and terrifying state of education in this country today. Before we would do that, this is the Thanksgiving episode, sort of.
Yay!
So, as we give thanks every week, we want to do it again. We want to remind everybody who's listening, you can subscribe on iTunes, or it's not iTunes anymore. Sorry, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere you get your podcasts. You can subscribe. You can tell your friends. You can leave us ratings. You can even throw us some money on Patreon and check out Pete's almost Steve Jobs outfit on YouTube and leave comments on individual episodes there. I'm going to do the quick micro machine routine where I run through the names of everybody who's ever given us any money. 3, 2, 1. Ryan Miller, MS Babai, Molly Robinson, Check Your Kids at the Door, Chris Coleman, MC Daniel 1980, Mallory McKenzie, Tina Davis, Miriam, Rob Gilberry, Lindsay Woodruff, Andrew Sandoval, Barbara Geiger, Bill D'Amica, Dana Bose, Jacques Olvera, Morning Glow, Cotton Farmer, AZ, Wes Clark, Jennifer Wynn, Julie McCarthy, Paula Polsky, Mary Williams, and Julie Burton.
Get it.
I get it. All of those people give us money either
Thank
through
you
Anchor
so much.
or mostly on Patreon. We appreciate every cent. What do you think? I mean, the production value on this thing is through the roof. In reality,
we've been able to actually get some gear because of it. So thank you. I mean, really, we've been able to stay afloat, meaning we've been able to record this remotely.
I meant to tell you, I got to dip into the petty cash. I got to fix my iPhone screen. It's a little cracked.
Okay, Mike, we'll take it to the board. We'll get it to the steering committee. We'll have a vote. We'll decide whether your broke-ass, cracked screen is petty cash worthy.
So it's funny because the holidays are coming up, Thanksgiving obviously this week, and then Christmas, and normally we would go to my mom's in Connecticut, but we're staying home. You and me, we're staying home out of an abundance of caution, as they say, and we don't know yet what we'll be doing for Christmas. And I said to my wife, I'm like, at least, maybe we'll save a little bit of money this year. She's like, no, we won't. We have to buy everything for that. Usually my mom serves Thanksgiving dinner. We have to buy all of that for ourselves. We have to make the Christmas. If we do it, if it's like a COVID Christmas, you got to make it extra special for the kids so they don't realize they're being traumatized. We have to prepare everything ourselves. We're not nobody else takes any responsibility. It's just us. Right. It's not going to be any cheaper. It's going to probably be more expensive. But that's not what it's all about, Pete, because money can't buy family.
No, but what money can buy is expensive cars, things that you love, that you really love. I'm not talking about, your kids. I'm talking about Xbox. Come on, the new Xbox. So.
Well, no, it's the new PlayStation. Which, you know what? Look. Maybe one of these days, our kids will design the latest console in 20 years, 10 years even. Then all the kids do is learn coding today. That's one of the things you can do instead of go to college.
There you go.
Learn how to code.
Mike, you're giving that.
Learn how to code.
Yeah, exactly.
You could be like the hacker in Die Hard, where you're just like, what did you invite me here for? My sparkling personality? And he's opening the vaults. He's opening the bank vaults because he learned how to code. That guy didn't go to college.
Exactly. Exactly, and there's no point in doing that.
There's no point in anyone going to college, right?
Well,
that's how you feel.
All right, so let's do it.
So you explain to me. So last night, you woke up in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m., fired off a series of feverish texts to me. The prophet.
Some of which I said, please ignore. I said, please ignore those ones. Those are super graphic.
You said. He said Xenu came to me in a dream, and he told me that we need to discuss the education system. Both of us right now are in the throes of trying to figure out what schools our kids are going to be going to next year. And in the New York City public school system, you don't just go to the school that's up down the block. You apply. It's like college. My wife has been attending all these virtual open houses to see like what the schools look like and all this stuff, because you can't go the way you would during COVID. So you can't even see if there's a cool Robin Williams teacher there.
So just to follow, let's break it down for everybody. The way it works here is it's in New York City is it's not exactly like if you live in a town and somewhere in the United States and you live in a district, you pretty much are going to go to the elementary. There's probably 2 elementary schools funnel down, or 3 or 4, maybe they funnel down to 2 middle schools, and that funnels into 1 high school. So you know where, but you know where it's going to go, and then the different districts, and sometimes you move whatever. In New York City, it's like exponentially more complicated because you can go out of your zone, you can go out of your school district. There's different ways you can test into certain schools. There's all these different options that you have, and of course, with options comes
stress,
different choice and stress, and you're trying to figure out. And not only that, but then you're thinking, wait, is the New York City public school system really is that the system that I chose for my kids? Fuck, what have I done? Have I made a huge mistake? That's the question. Have I made a huge mistake? And that is what we're going to start to pick apart. Not the New York. I'm not saying
because you live in New York.
No. So this is interesting. So I want to be clear. It's not New York specific, so forget that, right? I want to talk specifically. I am talking specifically about the United States, though, because, well, not necessarily because.
Well, for us, I mean, what else can we speak to, right? Although you did go to kindergarten with Princess Diana, so maybe
I mean, I can speak about international, of course. Mike, come on, man, look at me.
I keep forgetting you lie about having grown up in England.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So. I guess what my point is all right, what is the current state of education, and what are we striving for? So as parents, we want the best for our kids. So I want the best for my kids, and I have a high degree of guilt around the fact that my kids, I'm not able to put them in private school. Now, what does that mean?
Private school isn't always the best, though. It depends on where you live.
Well, this is, I guess, my point. So that's where I'm sort of coming from is that even a like that's a very first world problem, of course, to even say that, but that is what I feel like I am maybe doing my kids a disservice by not being able to put them in a school that would challenge them more. Okay, so what does that mean? But guess what, these private school, lower school, private school, middle school, high school, we're talking $30,000, maybe. I mean, at the low end. At the low end. Low end, $30,000 a year. So just to put this in perspective, because I went to, and the reason I have all these machinations about it is because I went to private school my entire school. That's why I'm a huge douchebag and nobody likes it, right?
That's why you wear shirts with pineapples.
However, that does explain the yacht. You know what I'm saying? The yacht that I have slept on a couple times, even though the owners didn't even know I was there. You know what I'm saying?
You were like the bad guy in the Goonies, who was like,
I was
me and my dad are coming to your town to buy your house.
I was Chet with the.
It wasn't Chet. I can't remember. It was Troy.
Chad. No, but so I was totally Chad, whatever.
That's weird science.
But it's been a really interesting experience going through the New York City public school system because it's been so good up to the, it's been so good. And there's been good things and there's been not so great things, but ultimately, and by the way, we did have our kids in a private sort of nursery school. In and of itself was an astronomical amount of money for what it was. And, like to have your kid in a private nursery school till 12 o'clock in the afternoon we're talking multiples of that number that I just said. Like we're really close. I mean, it's insane to be paying that much money to have your kid in a private.
I agree. I did not send my kid to a private nursery school or a private anything at this point. And both because I can't afford it and because I don't want to raise Troy from the Goonies.
Okay. Yes. So then let's try and figure this out. So what is the point? What is the value then? I'm thinking of what a private school education would give my kids versus a public school education.
But this isn't, the value is the same thing with whether you go to an Ivy League college or not. It's not so much what everybody's basically, all things being equal, the main benefit you're getting is networking and potential connections to people. That's what Ivy League colleges are.
Okay, correct.
That's what going to a private school is potentially good for. Being able to get a connection into a better college within the, it's not necessarily about what you learn, it's about who you know, which is how basically the world works, especially during the Trump era.
100%. The high school, private high schools definitely does not work like that. They do not have, there's not a fast track.
Private high school,
there is not a fast track to
if you get a B in a private high school, you probably have a slightly, depending on, again, it depends. Now, schools have pipelines, they have connections to different colleges.
Okay.
It depends if that exists.
So that is different. So that is more around, I feel it's coming down to a few different points here. One is just being able to teach. So one, are my kids going to get are they going to be able to do critical thinking? That is a really important factor for me. Are they going to be able to tell whether something is an opinion piece or a news piece and be able to think critically through whether it's news or whether it's their own a situation or whatever?
It's harder every day.
Okay, correct. It is. And actually,
I wasn't being facetious.
No, and I think that where we are as a country is a definite reflection of the last 20, 30 years of our.
So you're saying the reason kids are ill-equipped to do critical thinking or are more likely to fall into the fake news trap or to be influenced by that kind of stuff is because they don't have the tools, they haven't been taught the tools they need to avoid that kind of stuff.
No, actually, they're probably way more equipped than we are, or the generation that is currently of our age and a little bit younger, right? So millennials and Gen X's and whatnot. Why? Because these kids have had much more experience, right? This is new for us. So think about our moms on Facebook, right? Think about.
I'm always thinking about your mom.
It's hot, I know. And I'll take
like
it.
Back to the Future, right?
Yeah. But I think that's part of it. Is we have a generation that can't tell. Like, this is the generation. Remember the Nigerian email scam? It went from email scams to this. Like, we're missing that part of me, and they're in trouble. And I think this could really work out. You're kind of missing. And okay, we're mixing a couple things here, but the critical education part, the critical thinking, is a key part of this, right? And being able to just be able to decipher valuable information. Okay, so we'll put that aside. Where did this come from? It came from the fact that we are now in New York City back to online schools. So our schools are now back online.
Yes.
So what's happening? Is we as parents are having to teach our kids probably more than we've ever had to teach kids ever, right? So it already happened for the last 8 months in many states where schools were closed and we did online learning, where the moms and dads were there and the caregivers were basically there sitting, teaching our kids, right? Yes. As we start to figure this stuff out, part of what I'm doing is now going online and I type in my kids' math module, core curriculum module score, and immediately there's all the amazing, like, Khan Academy and tons of videos that are just walking me through exactly how to do this math. Maybe not the same, definitely not the same problem, but okay. So now we have all this resource at our fingertips to be able to essentially teach our kids, classes and math and whatnot. So what is the value that we're getting?
So you're saying because of the internet and our easy access to this stuff, and the world is flat, and we all have all this stuff, that we don't need teachers and school anymore?
Not necessarily. Not true. No. Not exactly the point that I'm making, but or trying to make. But it's just, this COVID situation has put our relationship with the value of education and where we are. First of all, the value of educators, right? So
they've always been undervalued. Some
yeah,
would say.
100%,
Many,
100%.
most.
But then to what price do we pay that? And to what value are we getting out of our public school system? I think that's like really the key here, right?
So when I was growing up, I know what you mean about like the problem with critical thinking. When I was a little kid, Howard the Duck came out, and I saw an ad. You can call the 1-800 number and talk to Howard the Duck. If my teachers had taught me how to tell the difference between a scam and not, I wouldn't have spent, my $50 of my parents' money on hold waiting to talk to Howard the Duck. I've never even, to this day, I've never seen the movie, Pete.
It's just Howard the Duck.
It was my damn Turkey Hill elementary school in Orange, Connecticut. They dropped the ball. They let it fall right into it. Howard the Duck, it leads to Nigerian email schemes. It leads to voting for Trump.
Well, this is it. I mean, like, look. So what are we striving for here? If you and I are getting our kids into the next stage of school, right? So that's why it's becoming so apparent to us. So we're at home teaching our kids, trying to get our kids into the next best school. What the hell does that mean? Well, what is the next best school? I don't know. Like, these are the questions that we're asking, because what is the net goal?
Well, a couple of weeks ago, we did the history of parenting, and one of the things we touched on briefly in that was that back in the day, I think it was that episode, back in the day, like in the 50s or whatever, there was a kind of a clear path to achieving the American dream. Right. You took all these steps or whatever, right? And then things kind of have blown up and gotten more diffuse, and, in both good ways and bad. There are a lot of different ways to go about achieving that, but also the payoff or the pot of gold at the end of the tunnel is a lot smaller and blah, 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 right? So it's kind of the same thing with education, where the world has gotten wider and there's lots of different avenues. You do not have to go to college or be a lawyer or be a doctor to be successful. There's a lot to do it, but it makes it harder for parents like us to help guide our kids.
Right.
Which path should they go down? What are the fundamentals they need before they fork off on those different paths and that kind of stuff? And the options are, college is a sort of traditional pathway to success, which is bullshit, I think, as everybody kind of knows these days. There's trades, which have kind of fallen out of favor, but are potentially the most stable.
Right.
And then there's like I said, you could learn how to code. You could open toys on YouTube.
Yeah.
You could start a lucrative podcast.
There we go. There we go. And that's where the real money comes in. Brought to you by podcasting.
So you wanted to talk about this topic, and I put it out there to our listeners, and we got a lot of thoughtful responses. And basically all the stuff we just touched on was sort of like, what are the potential upsides? What are the drawbacks? Is it really as cut and dried as it used to be? Where is it like, if you had a college degree, you were kind of you're gonna be successful, you're gonna have a good job, be able to take care of a family. Nowadays, it's impossible to, like, the inflation and the value of things and the ability of somebody who doesn't have a college degree, and even many people who do, to make a living and support their family and stuff. It's a razor thin margin, right? Like, people need 3 jobs to support their family, whereas back in the day, you could have a 9-to-5 job, bring down a decent wage, and afford an apartment or a house. Now, right. It's much, much more difficult. But again, there are other pathways. But the thing is that like trying to scratch a lottery ticket, or are there step-by-step ways where you're going to get there? So, all right, we asked our followers, and I thought the first response that's throwing you a bone, because we discussed a little bit about maybe this wasn't the topic, but user Unabashedly Blushing says that she thinks this is a really timely topic for parents, because around this time of year you start to see family more, and then you get judgmental family who is going to start to ask you which way you're going. Are you sending your kid to prep school? If you don't send this kid to the right school, is she going to get into the right college, and all this stuff? And that's a ton of pressure for kids, but it's also a ton of pressure for the parents, especially now. Like right now, my 10-year-old isn't really necessarily thinking about what middle school he's going to get into and how that's going to influence the high school and how that might influence college, blah, blah, blah. That's what we're sort of thinking about, like, right, what's the best path for him to get on to ensure future success. But it's really, really, really messy. But Unabashedly Blushing says that, like, this is the time of year when you might have conversations, because you're going to see that aunt you don't see that often.
Yeah.
And that aunt probably has a nephew or a son that she's really proud of and is bragging about. And she asks, what's your kid doing? You're like, he's running into sliding doors like Tommy Boy, or he's in his 6th year of college.
He's got a bucket on his head and he's headbutting the wall. Come on, Aunt Gladys.
He's got the haircut from Dumb and Dumber and the chip tooth. You know what? That guy. You know what? I don't know. I don't even know how they afforded an apartment in that movie Dumb and Dumber. But it wasn't a very nice apartment. It wasn't very. They worked at a pet grooming company.
Huge plot hole. Thanks, Mike.
It was a limo driver, and the other one was a pet company, the pet cleaning company. But it didn't work out. But just back then, see, because in the early '90s, you could be a limo driver and work at a pet grooming company and have a nice apartment.
And now you need to be both a limo driver and a pet groomer. Because that's so unrealistic that there were two people. You had to kind of be one person doing both. And I think, look, this is hard. I feel a lot of stress around this and a lot of uncertainty. And I don't know, what the best course of action is. However, I will say this, and part of this story was, so my oldest daughter is goes to School of American Ballet, and which, by the way, I don't know if Disney Plus. Do you have Disney Plus? There's a show going to be called.
I watched Mulan on it just a few weeks ago.
Or not a show, but like a documentary called On Point, and I think she's going to be part of that. It's about.
Oh my God! Can we get some Can we get some crossover advertisement Disney Plus and work out a deal?
Yeah. They just immediately paid you to fix your screen.
That's all I need.
But the point is so it was, I'm at the School of American Ballet, and I'm hanging out, and it's like, the dads there are much or quite a bit older than I. They're, whatever. They're sort of much in a different socioeconomic stratosphere than I am. And this guy who was in his late 50s, early 60s, whatever. His daughter was the same age as my kid. Basically was saying, my 2 older sons are in college. I overheard him talking to someone, because that's how
you were eavesdropping.
That's basically how I do all my conversations. And he goes, my daughter, I put her through public school, and I have no idea why I put my sons through private school, even though they're in college now. Like he was like, he was basically lamenting the fact he could obviously and easily afford it, but the point is that he was like, what the fuck?
It's like a status thing. You just think that's what you should do. You think it's better because you're paying. But
I don't know if it's so. This is the thing. I don't know if it's a status thing, and this is where it comes into it. Where it's, what is the value? I think it comes more into the value. At some point, status equates to value, right? Like, you have like a nice coat, and maybe whatever it brings a certain gravitas. But otherwise, when that's not. It's not a premium product. You're just paying a lot of money for something that doesn't really make sense. And there's an author out there who's basically saying, because of COVID, because of the shutdown, there's a whole strata of upper tier universities in the United States that are about to go under. And I believe that because I have this, like, in my mind, it's called the Bucknell principle, right? The Bucknell is a university here in the States. I don't even know where it is. You've all heard it. Some of us.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know where it is, but it's like, I'm sure it's a great school. I'm sure it's fine. I have no problem with it. I did, though, look up its tuition per year. It's $58,000 a year. Harvard is 51.
Right.
So the point is that you're paying to go to Bucknell, and you're going to be like a solid B student to go there, and you're going to get Bucknell, and but no one's going to give a shit that you went to Bucknell, right?
Oh, the point is it's all about the name recognition.
Right, exactly. The only point, you might as well go to SUNY Purchase, was a state school, a state university school, or whatever. Like, the point is go to a community college, go to a state school, because the name recognition has so little these days. And I know, I mean, do hiring and whatnot, but like it just does it has little effect, with the one exception of the top tier schools, right? So if you're not in the top tier schools, it just doesn't matter.
But what you're talking about is college versus college, right? Whereas there's also, you could go to, you don't have to go to Harvard or even Bucknell. You could go to SUNY Purchase, but even then, supposedly you will have a leg up because of that degree over somebody who didn't, right? So _ Ash Cunningham _ says he's been an accountant for 15 years after being a university dropout. So I'm assuming he's from Canada or England. He said not having a degree has had zero impact on his ability to do his job, but it's frustrating to know that less capable people may be higher up in the career ladder based on pieces of paper, meaning because of their degrees, right? But then, like you're saying, the extra level to that is those people all have degrees. The guy with the Harvard degree might have, even though maybe he's not quite as good at his job, but because of the pedigree or the name on it, might have an easier time advancing up the ladder than the guy who doesn't have that. And it's just all this reputation.
Well, there's no question. So there's no question that if you're going to go to a premier school, a top tier school, you're going to get a leg up. That's 100%. Where it becomes worth.
But it's not necessarily. So I knew people that went to Harvard, and they weren't necessarily working harder. It's harder to get in than it is to graduate.
No, but don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is that the inflation of it all hasn't caught up. So what happens is everything has been inflated. So grade inflation, what maybe, teachers are pressured to give A's over B's so their kids go into better schools and yada yada. And so what happens is maybe you're not thinking as well about a particular subject. And the point is that you're doing grade inflation, and someone thinks that they should be going to Harvard when actually they can only get into Bucknell. Why Bucknell? I'm only talking about
Bucknell. Just get out of here, Bucknell.
Yeah, well, I actually
kind of takes place.
Yeah. But the point being is because if you go to Bucknell, it's probably a beautiful school. I have no doubt that it is, and I bet you the experience is there.
I think it's a shithole, actually.
And not only that, but I bet you the teachers that teach there are top notch, because because tuition is $58,000 a year. That is why they're going to afford. And by the way, let's not beat around the bush. United States top tier education is the best in the world. Because of why? Because everyone fucking pays through the nose for it. Now, here's the other thing: student debt. So now, are we going to get our kids ready? Like, okay, so I'm going to work my ass off. I'm not going to get so here's the best case scenario. I can't put my kids through private school. I just can't. I can't do it, right? Like, it's just not possible. Now, I went through private school, and I talked to my dad about it, and I was like, dude, how the fuck do you even do this? And he goes, because it was like, it basically was like $5,000 a year. Like, shit, was that like 100,000? He's like, no, I guess it was like $10,000 a year in today's speak. You know what I mean? It wasn't
all that long
ago.
No,
because it was in the 1890s. I'm 90 years old, and I have the complexion of a much younger, older woman. Yes, thank you. And the point is that so back to my daughter, what am I going to do, right? I want her to get into a high school. I want her to be in a great high school, but at the same time, we've got our local, we've got our school system, our public school system schools that are actually amazing, right? Luckily, we have lots of amazing options here in New York City, but there's a lot of options, and it's trying to figure out which ones you want to go to.
Pretty headache, yeah.
Ultimately, it comes down to it's completely shifting. By even starting to think about it, it's completely shifting the dynamic of, you have to go to the school. You have to go to this high school because now you're going to go to this college. And if you don't go to this college, you're not going to get this job, because everything is starting to change. And it's changed, obviously in our lifetime, and in the last 5 years, it's changing. And so I think
the benefits of that stuff and of higher education and of those better schools hasn't necessarily changed, but it's gotten harder and harder and more narrow for broader swaths of people to achieve those. It's just the 1% thing, right? Like, it's just the American dream, or that kind of success is closing itself off to people who are in a particular funnel that can get there. And it's really hard to get into that funnel to try to reach your American dream. Whereas it used to be, the bottom used to be a lot more wide open. It just keeps getting more narrow and narrow because, like you said,
Correct.
College has gone up. Somebody even mentioned this. It's gone up 65%, the tuition, just in the past like 20, 30 years since we went to college, right?
Yeah.
And back in the day, buying like a 2-bedroom house
right.
was a lot more affordable. And nowadays, you need to be a millionaire.
Okay, so now what are we exactly doing to our kids? Are we sentencing them? Right? What once was an opportunity, is it now a sentence to send your kids to college? So what? So they graduate with a possible like $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 of debt, working at a
grad school. Yeah, more than that.
Yeah, I mean, like the point is I don't know. Okay, so then what are we trying to do? Right? And that comes back to this whole critical thinking thing.
We're trying to get the kids to move out of the house and to be able to live somewhere else and not
stop fighting and stop. Just brush your goddamn teeth. Okay, Dana Bose, brush your
But seriously though, right? Like, but how much do you care? So you've got 3 kids.
Yeah.
How much do you care if one goes to college and one becomes a Minecraft YouTube star and one becomes an electrician, but they all have enough money to move out and to rent or buy their own place and to be self-sufficient? That's what you want. You want them to be self-sufficient and you want them to be fulfilled. No one is fulfilled. It's just not the way the world works. It's just an impossible dream.
I'll order
but
it.
You can be self-sufficient.
I think if you can, I just need them to think critically. That's key, because then they can make argument. If they can make an argument one way or another, that's great.
Okay, but do you want your kid to be someone who can think critically? But
I want them to argue in the lobby of a McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly.
They should give them money and make a convincing argument, though.
Look. So that's a good example. So my cousin Vinny, he made convincing arguments, and he went to like University of Brooklyn or something. It's actually probably like the Bronx Law School was the joke in that movie. Yeah. But he went into court and he didn't look the part and he didn't have the connections, but he could think critically, Pete.
Oh my God, it
doesn't matter where you learn what you learn. You don't have to go to Harvard to be smart.
Exactly.
Not every smart person gets into Harvard.
Okay.
And there's plenty of electricians who could have gone to Harvard.
Right.
The world needs distickers too.
So Jesus, that's not the best theory, but okay. The point is I think that there are things. So we talked about the trades. Now here's an important, for me, one of the things that I believe in is that I believe that you need to learn a trade. Like, okay, so what is a trade? In this case, I believe programming is a trade that everyone should learn. Like it's not even a trade, it's like a language. It's going to be a language of the future, like you would learn Spanish or English or French. You just need to know how to be able to communicate with.
My dad always wanted me to learn. He thought I should learn Chinese when I was going to college. Didn't work out that way. I barely know English.
You would have been a lot better off. You would have been a lot better off. No joke. So I don't know. So this is it, and I think that we got a lot of. I mean, there's some other amazing, really awesome comments that we got.
We got a lot of comments about, the debt not being worth it, or I have multiple degrees and my husband didn't go to college and he supports our entire family. This guy, CLP PEA says, I'm a labor market analyst. College is not worth it. Trades are a better option than most. A lot of these people are like, I think the idea of having like a blue collar trade, an electrician, plumber, or something like that, where there used to be trade schools. Remember, there's one in my town, and I remember to this day there was a stigma associated with a blue collar job versus a white collar job, which is probably an American problem. I guess probably not. It's a class problem that exists probably in a lot of places. There's no shame in working a trade. And a lot of these people who work trades, there's one guy here who says he has a degree and he makes more money being a team lead at Target, right? Do you think he might have been more satisfied if he had learned how to be an electrician or something like that?
I mean, look, because what does a trade teach you? It teaches you how to make something, and there's
a skill, a real skill.
All right, so there's money in finance and be a I personally feel like hedge fund managers are the fucking worst in the world. I feel like, I really do. I feel like quants and those.
I have a friend who does that.
Yeah,
and he's wealthy, and he says to me, he's like, it's a joke.
Yeah.
He's like, he puts his money away. He's like, this could all go up in smoke at any time. He's like, none of this makes any sense. He's like, he's the smartest person I know. He has a degree in economics and chemistry, and he's like, this is nonsense that I make this much money doing this stuff. It's all a crapshoot, blah blah blah. Like, he is self-aware and acknowledges it, that it's just a nonsense. Whereas a teacher, even,
right.
But as we're talking about, or a trade, somebody with like a real skill where they're imparting something real that's really tangible, or doing something tangible, seems
right.
to me is really undervalued.
Well, I mean, ultimately, trade, we're talking about like making something or doing something with your hands, or creating, and it's a little bit different
like
from a
teacher.
Unabomber. Yeah, like the Unabomber, exactly. Like, you're making like a really good point, but over a long period of time, that people then absorb into myth culture, and somehow you'll get your pencil drawing of your face, and that'll become the way you look for the rest of your life.
Good looking guy. Let's be honest.
He is a good looking guy. But I think trade is a really important thing, and I think the next most important trade will be programming, meaning that is a skill. It is a thing that you can learn. You do not need an education. You don't need a formal education, I should say, to learn that, and it is something that will advance you. But also, even just the trades like plumbing or electrician. Those are absolutely, by the way, I think they're more valuable now than they think they've ever been.
Something like becoming a programmer or a coder or like an app designer, right, is also a bit of a mirage, right? It's like a kind of thing where a kid who likes to play video games, or who took a coding class in junior high, often is like, oh, I'm going to, create the next big app and be a millionaire, where in reality, you're lucky if you get a job testing video games, in Beverly, Massachusetts, right? So
that's a really depressing.
I have applied for that gig. Honestly, I applied for that gig.
Not Beverly, Massachusetts, though.
Yeah, in Beverly, Massachusatters. Look, there's no shame in it. I'm not good at video games.
There is shame in Beverly, Massachusetts.
No, that's true. So KCMWVU says that we don't care what our kids choose to do, but we want them to do something useful, whether that's a result of going to college or a technical school. She's like, around here, skilled trades are retiring much faster than they're being trained, right? So we're running out of people who do those things, right? She says people knock it and discount it as not being educated like we were in a college setting. Meanwhile, colleges have gotten a shitload more expensive, but if you want to learn a trade, you can be an apprentice for a little while. I even have friends who've gone to like dental school. My sister-in-law is a dental hygienist. It's like 2 years of school or something like that. And now she's consistently working. She's wearing a hazmat suit so she doesn't get the plague, but she's making her dough, right? And it's not, you don't have to have gone to college for that. There's no less value in doing, dental hygienist does more than a freaking dentist does. When I go there, cleans my teeth. What's the dentist do? He comes in, he pokes around, and he says, hey, I'll see you in 6 months.
Let's be honest. The dental hygienist does the dirty work in your case.
Yes, and he gets the glory.
And then he walks in and goes, boom. He just X's his crotch near your mouth and then walks away. Or she.
So a handful of people said college is most valuable when you go in with like a plan and you know what you want to do, and you're like, this is going to be, my path. Like, this is what I
want to be a political scientist.
Well, liberal arts is a little bit tougher, but
I want to be a political scientist.
So I had a liberal arts education, and it took me years after school to find like a stable career. My skills, while transferable, are also meaningless. So it didn't really help me all that much. I wish I could build something with my hands, or, I can plumb a toilet. Maybe I can go around and be like, if anybody needs me to plunge, I said plumb a toilet.
Yeah.
So I can't even do that, folks.
You just took it from like, oh, okay, Mike, that's not so bad, to, oh, yeah, that actually makes more sense.
So not only can I not plunge a toilet, my liberal arts education didn't teach me the words I need to know in order to talk about plunging a toilet. So again, that's what we're saying. Like, so you got to decide what you want out of it. And like, for parents, it's one thing to be like, I want my kid to be educated. And a bunch of people did make the point that education is valuable in that it opens up your worldview,
100%.
and people who aren't educated and aren't exposed to as much stuff are more likely to be closed off and intolerant, which is one of the reasons we have some of the stuff we're getting these days in a divided country, divided America.
Well, it's true. I mean, I think, the exit polls are showing that there is a certain percentage of education was a factor. Let me just put it that way. But let's talk about experience. So I'm not poo-pooing college as an experience. In fact, college as an experience is a crucial and necessary part of. So my kids are definitely going to go to college. They're not going to go to college, even if they want to learn a trade. Even if they want to learn a trade, they're definitely going to go to college first, and then they can learn a trade after, or however it works.
But when you say the experience of college, are you talking about the whole package? Are you talking about?
I'm talking about like the whole package.
Be a social creature. And
I'm talking about beer bongs. I'm talking about 5-minute keg stands. I'm talking about shutting down the party and calling people out for wanting to leave the party. That's what I'm talking about.
You're talking about getting high and watching Super Troopers 10 times in a row.
That's right. I mean, that's for me. That's like we call that Wednesday. But the point is that no, the experience of college is important. But I think what's happened, and I believe so, but you can go to a community or a state school or a community college and have that experience.
Sure. And a lot of people mention community colleges as a viable alternative. And it definitely.
I think ultimately, I think the problem is basically there's a whole middle swath. The Bucknells of the world are in serious fucking trouble. Because why? Because while Bucknell is an absolutely beautiful school, I can imagine the campus is incredible. When someone, when the resume comes across the desk where it says like this person went to Bucknell, it just fucking doesn't matter. It like whatever.
GW.
Yeah, you could have. So the Bucknell versus SUNY Purchase, it's like there's like maybe a tenth of a degree.
Right. Exactly.
But that's not the point. You immediately go to their experience. What have you done? What are you looking at? What type of person are you? What have you actually accomplished? The Harvard.
You might not even get in the door if you don't know somebody who gets you in the door sometimes. So sometimes you don't even get that far. If you know somebody who went to Harvard, or your dad went to Harvard and you went to Bucknell, you have a better chance of getting that job than somebody who just went to Bucknell did. In a lot of cases.
Okay, I mean, certainly, I have no qualms about networking, and I think that that's a totally valid and valuable part. The point being, though, there's no Bucknell club. Like the number of schools that have a club in New York City are very few, right? There's like 7. I don't know, maybe there's 10. The point is that there's not a lot of middle tier schools that are charging this amount of money, is my point, that have this level of networking. Now you can go to the Penn Club, you can go to the Harvard Club, you can go to the Princeton, like whatever. Those, because guess what?
But you're paying for more than the education. You're paying for that access, which you're not getting from Bucknell.
And to be clear, let's recap. You're going to pay, on average, about $5,000 less than going to Bucknell. Going to Harvard, you're going to pay $5,000 less a year. So total, $20,000 less than going to Bucknell for 4 years. And you get a place to eat in New York City anytime you want. That's a big deal, okay? Because you go to Harvard Club. And Bucknell is and I'm picking on Bucknell because it's just
trashing it. Just change the name of it. Just call it like Birdcage or something. Just have two syllables.
No, there's no reason to. Why should I?
Because there's going to be a handful of listeners who went to Bucknell, and they're not going to.
I know. I went to BU. The BU is probably in the same Boston University.
BU is absolute trash. You're right.
Except for the volume of students who go there, which is 30,000 undergrad, which is impossible to look away from.
Can you name one famous person who went to Bucknell?
Martin Luther King Jr.
He went to Bucknell.
Yes. No, his bus stopped there.
Oh, yeah?
And then on his way all the way down to Fayetteville. And that Fayetteville University.
Historic. What a historic journey. the pit stop at Bucknell. I really want to know why Bucknell is the subject or the object of your ire tonight. Did you get
No,
did
you
your
know
daughter
why?
get recruited for ballet at Bucknell, and you're
It's
just
funny.
they're not offering enough. Fuck these
No,
people.
I had no, it just came in my mind as something that was oh, that's a university.
That's true.
It could be anything, man. It could
Well, look,
be.
your ego's writing checks that your body can't cash, or your daughter can't cash. What if she gets rejected from Bucknell in a few years? How dumb are you going to feel? Maybe they're going to hear this. Maybe one of the admissions people at Bucknell is listening to this right now, and you just blew it. Guess who's never getting into Bucknell?
Yeah, guess what? My daughter, because we just that kind of scratch it's not in the cards. It's just not in the cards. It's just not in the cards. 50 grand a year.
The bubble's
50 grand a year for Bucknell. 58 grand a year out of my pocket for one person.
Did you see a list?
It's just not in the cards.
I wonder, did you? Do you have a dartboard in front of you that says Bucknell with the tuition? I really want to know.
No, the reason I bring it up is because it's a great example. I mean, no one's heard of, some people have heard of it, as you say. It's you've kind of heard of it. Maybe you know someone who goes there, maybe you don't. I'm sure it's a great liberal arts school, quote unquote, a great liberal arts. But is it worth $5 grand more a year than Harvard? And and what is it? What is it about Bucknell? If I have two people, one person went to Harvard, one person to Bucknell, am I going to throw the person is that going to get their foot in the door? No. The point is no, this is stupid, and we got to acknowledge it, and we got to say, what the fuck is going on, what are we going to do with our kids?
One of the interns in my department over the summer went to Bucknell, and I remember speaking with him, and he made an allusion to how much it costs. And I don't even know if he meant to. He referenced it, and I'm like, that can't be right. Because I was like, that sounds good. I mean, this guy, he looks like Wesley from The Princess Bride. He's really meek. And I'm like, what's this guy? This guy's getting his ass kicked that he goes anywhere. That's why he went to Bucknell. It's a safe place. He went to BU. He began his ass kicked by little Pete Andersons.
Yeah.
Every minute of the day. His kid couldn't hang.
Exactly.
But I could not believe how much it costs. I mean, everybody knows how outrageous colleges are getting. But then when you hear, which is the point of your example, when you hear of, even a top end of the middle school, if that's indeed what Bucknell is, you hear how much that costs, and you were like, what hope does anyone have, right?
Right. And
who's
so
not in the 1% who can buy themselves into one of the good schools.
So when you say everyone, we're talking about parents. This is our job to make sure that our kids have a future. And if we as parents look into the future and say and have no hope, then what does that mean?
The hope is that the future isn't down any one particular path anymore. There's a bunch of different ways.
Okay, well, guess what? Guess who's defining that? We are, right?
Sure.
We are the ones that have to redefine that process, that whole thing for our kids. And we have to take all the data, and we have to figure out what makes the most sense.
Well,
and quite honestly,
we have to give them options. We have to let them know that, hey, I'm not forcing you to go to college if you don't think it's for you. If you want to learn programming instead, if you want to learn a trade, if you want to go to community college, if you want to do something like that, that's viable. We need to remove the stigma from the person that doesn't.
Hold on a second. College. Removing the stigma from from programming. There is no
stigma. From programming.
Definitely. If you're listening to this and you're under the age of 18, learn how to fucking code. And if you're over the age of 18, learn how to fucking code.
Yeah.
Everybody, it's like a language. Guys, you got to just know how to. You got to know how to. Yeah, there's many languages, but you have to know the fundamentals of it.
Just watch The Social Network, and you too can learn how to be a grade A asshole. And then watch the news every day, and you too can learn how to bring down civilization by creating your own Facebook.
Well, actually, that's a great example, right? That's a good example of basically doing something before you know what is going to happen.
Okay, yeah, but no one knows what's going to happen.
No one's not necessarily going to know, but again, it comes down to critical thinking. I want my kids to be resilient. I want them to be compassionate, or not empathetic.
Rich. You mean rich? Oh.
No, I want them to be empathetic. Compassionate would be a plus. Ultimately, I think, I want them to be flexible.
Cool.
I want them to be flexible. They're already cool, obviously. I mean, look at this mock turtleneck. I mean, come on.
Unbelievable. Hey. Unbelievable. I just went from 6 to midnight with that mock turtleneck.
I don't even know what that means. Oh my God, we had so many amazing, thoughtful comments, and we
did. We haven't read any of them. So I thought this one's good. So this is from Notes from Gail, and she said, I think it depends on the kid, and we should be teaching our kids that there's no shame in being a good electrician or plumber. The problem with our modern world is a lack of good training for essential jobs. Other countries are excelling at this where we fail. College is great if your kid wants to be an engineer. I wanted to be an engineer, but could be a waste if all they come out of it with is a stack of loan debt, or they're in college for 5 years, like in Tommy Boy, or 6 years or 7 years, right? So I think that they need to know that other options are available to them, and that the options are essentially equal. The goal isn't necessarily for you to be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, or even to be a plumber. It's to be happy and self-sufficient, and nobody wants their kid to have a job they hate, even if they're rich from it. There's a fine line between, being unhappy and being unsuccessful and all that stuff.
Unfortunately, I know so many unsuccessful lawyers. Dude, like that's the whole point.
Dude, every
right?
lawyer I've met in my adult life hates it.
It sucks. Not just hates it, but you can also very easily not get rich being a lawyer.
Well,
you can not only get yourself into a hole, but you can then work in an industry that is like entirely reprehensible,
and it's a grind. Working 80 hours a week.
Excuse me. Let me rephrase that. That's not.
My
accurate.
dad's a lawyer. Totally
You
reprehensible.
can find yourself in a part of it that is really reprehensible, like the technology industry or whatever. But the point being, doctors. Let's talk about doctors for 1 second, because it's Thanksgiving. It's Thanksgiving, and we're about to go into COVID. We now have a population here in the United States that is, and as I say to my parents, what is the fucking point? My parents have this beautiful, beautiful dichotomy going on where it's all about education, being smart, being intelligent, going to the right school, right this, right that. But the stupid doctors, Dr. Fauci this and Dr. Fauci, it's like
it's not about education. They don't care about. They just want the kid to reach a certain level.
Right. And my point is that what is the fucking point of my kid becoming a doctor if you are not going to listen to them either on any sort of scientific piece of information that they are trying to pass on, peer-reviewed scientific data that is coming out of their mouths, whether it's climate change. Basically, by the way, we're so focused on COVID, and not to be a total fucking bummer, but look, I am the furthest, but we have on the heels of this bigger problem.
But scientists don't go into being scientists for
money, exactly.
And doctors don't go. I'm sure I'm positive there are a ton of people who are like, the doctor path is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to have private practice, and I'm going to be rich. But a fair amount of them want to help people, and they feel that kind of calling to be a doctor. So, it's not they're not necessarily. I'm sure it's frustrating for them to not be believed, and for the scientists as well. But a doctor, like, if they help one person, and they're like, all right, that's sort of what I'm in it for.
Time to go home. They help one person, and they're like, I feel like I'm done here. I feel like I really nailed today. I gotta go.
When you decide you want to be a doctor, for most people, it's a sacrifice to know how long you're going to be in school, how long it's going to take before you get money. The problem with something like a lawyer, or even just with something like going to college, is we have been taught that if you become a lawyer, you're going to be rich and have a great job. And if you go to college, you're going to get a good job and you'll be successful. But that's not the way it is. Every lawyer I know hates it and has switched careers, as opposed to my dad, who had like a private small town practice and that kind of stuff, which was a different era. But guys our age, several of my friends became lawyers and were like, this was miserable. Either they went to a big firm and they're busting their asses for 80 hours a week for like 3 years. They're like, I hate this, right? Or they switch gears completely. Or you go to college now and you're like, just by getting that degree, I now know I have like a baseline of how much money I'm going to make, and I'm going to be fairly successful. And that's just not the case either way anymore. You're not necessarily going to be rich and happy if you're a lawyer, and you're not necessarily going to be successful and happy at college. There's just a million different ways. And I think you need to figure out what is going to work for you. And that's one of the good things about right now. There are a lot of different options. There's options where you can just be like, fuck it, I'm going to suck it up, I'm going to do this, and I'll be fine. Unless, I don't know, military like that. Like if you want to join the Navy and be a pilot or whatever, like, or go in the Army, you know what you're going to be doing. You'll come out with some kind of skills, but I don't even know that they're having a great time. But sometimes the stability and the structure of that kind of thing can be appealing to people, because I think you don't know what you're going to get except debt if you go to college or whatever. There's no longer the A to B to C, right? Now it's A to B to who the fuck knows where you're going to end up. You might end up switching gears. You might not go to college. You might go back to college, 10 years in. A couple people said that. They were like, at first I didn't go to college, or I went to college and I switched gears, or I did all this. It's just everything is sort of a mess right now. There's no set paths anymore, and that's both a benefit and a problem, I think.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway from that is really that if you're in the Navy, you're on boats, but if you're in the Air Force, that's really
no. In Top Gun, they are Navy
If you
pilots.
remember, the Air
Top
Force
Gun,
goes up here, and then if you're in the Navy, it goes blah, 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 on the water, and that's how you can tell.
Check out the big brain on Brad. In Top Gun, they're Navy pilots. All right, so you can shove it up.
I want to. I want to. That's exactly where it is right now. Despite your best
real quick tangent. Nobody mentioned this, and it didn't come up. Would you want your kids to join the military?
I would be more than happy for my kids to join the military if that's something that they wanted to do.
Well, that's the thing. They got to choose what's right for them. And you got to set them up, like you said. You give them those critical thinking skills. You give them as much of a foundation and a base in the kind of stuff they need to know. And a lot of people complained that kids don't get practical life skills anymore in school.
Yeah.
You see this on Twitter all the time, where it's like, why don't we teach kids how to like balance a checkbook instead of like teaching them how to square dance in music class or something like that. And I'm sure once Betsy DeVos is out of there and we get somebody who actually, was a teacher and knows what they're doing, maybe the curriculum will change. But it's been the same for 50 years. But it is a good question. But I would have never wanted to take home ec and not home ec. Did you have to take home ec in your school?
No, not. And I think that would have probably been good. In fact, I think I took woodworking. There was some hands-on,
but very glancingly, right? Like
yes.
You took like one quarter or a semester of it, and you were like, all right, I got that off the books. I don't have to do that anymore because I'm going to college. I don't need.
I'm out of this podunk town.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I think it definitely is up to your kids. Look, this is for our kids. Our kids are going to be
all about the kids.
The next, it is all about the kids, isn't it? I mean, that's kind of what we're doing here. That's kind of the point of what this whole thing is about. It's not us. We've kind of been through it. I think we're a little bit we're lamenting our own experience because we probably were on the top end. We were lucky enough to just kind of skate by on the top end of it. We weren't really in the thick of it. I feel really bad for people that are 10 or 15 or 10 years younger than myself. I think that they've got a really shit deal. And I think,
those people were like coming out of school right when the huge economic downturn happened in like 2008.
And it has not recovered. It has not recovered. Things just simply don't make sense. This is the point. The point I'm trying to make, the point of this podcast is education. If we get to the core of it, why? What is the point of it? What are we trying to do? For a long period of time, it was a very straight trajectory. You get a better job. Obviously, my kids will be educated, but to what end, right? Does it mean that I have to give up my entire worldly earnings for them to earn a job, just so that they don't have crushing debt, only for them to earn median?
But
like, I don't know. or what? Or do they assume the debt and then I set them off on a journey of debt? Or do I take them and I say we're going to do something slightly different? Are we going to do something different?
But education used to be an end in itself, right? Learning about the world, knowing that stuff that used to be. Now it's just
how about this?
Tool to equip yourself with to try to make more money later.
Or how about this? Richest nation on the world, is it a right? Is it a right? Do we owe it to ourselves to pay it back and to have the level of education? By the way, I would say that there probably definitely are state schools and schools that have no tuition that have that caliber. However, and by the way, the United States, bar no country in the world, has the education level of the college, university that we have. Why? Because everything costs so much. So we bring talent from around the world.
The problem is grift, though.
The problem is that there's a disconnect, right? Just to that point. And actually, you're probably better off if you have European citizenship.
You son of a bitch.
Well, but it doesn't matter because if you're British, you're fucked. Because you're locked in. You dick faces. But meanwhile, in the rest of Europe, you can really go around and even Americans. Like, to be honest with you, as an American, I can go and study at the Sorbonne and pay basically half of what I would pay Bucknell. Half of what I would pay Bucknell at the Sorbonne.
So this was one of the things when we started talking about doing this topic. I think one of the things I said was, it might get political, and then also, like, I think a lot of it is just the function of American society and the capitalistic society we live in, and everything in America has just gotten the opportunities have narrowed, the price of everything has gone higher and higher. The middle class obviously doesn't exist anymore. I just think education is what's happening in education. A large part of it is a symptom of that. Whereas Bucknell should not cost $58,000, and that's not just because Bucknell is like, hey, we're going to charge more. It's because the whole ecosystem allows for all that stuff to go up and up and up and up and up, and as a result, the people who have access to it shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks and shrinks.
So I don't know if it's I don't blame it on
the rain
capitalism per se. What I blame it on is a disproportion, right? We're out of whack. Yes. That's the point. The point of Bucknell. Why Bucknell? Because who the fuck gives a fucking shit about Bucknell? No one in the world gives it. You come across and someone's like, oh, hi. I mean, it's just a good story. My parents were in some like northeast town. Maybe it was Maine. I can't remember. They were in some situation in the summer where they were introducing themselves to new people, and everyone in this one group that they were introduced, and this was like a random house, like we're vacationing or something. I can't remember what the story was, but everyone. So we're talking about old people all the way to young people. They would all introduce themselves by the school they went to and the year they went to. Hi, Abe, Yale '94. Hi, Greta, Yale, Princeton, 83 or whatever the fuck it is, right? The point is that they actually, it got to, here's just a slice, just a quick story about how people identified so closely to where they went to school that they, fucking 50 years. But it's only
the people that went to Yale and Princeton and stuff that do that.
All right.
Because that's their whole value is their whole personhood and value as a person is wrapped up in their status and that kind of shit.
So that is just a slice. That's just like, okay, that's the point. Is you would never do that. I would never do that. I don't think I've ever told anyone I went to BU. Yeah. I don't even know. And I think my parents paid a lot of money.
People would laugh at you.
They would laugh at me. They have. And I'm fortunate enough. I have to say, I'm completely fortunate enough, and I realize how fortunate I've been in my life, and I cannot believe how lucky I've been.
Privileged.
Privileged, yeah, 100%. And what I'm doing is I feel like I'm reconciling with that, and I'm trying to figure out how to take the best. Because, by the way, there are so many amazing things about the New York City public school system in general, in many different ways. And there's things that are really like not great. So let's just take, for example, like just straight up like the conditions of the buildings, right? Like I wish my kids didn't have to experience the bathrooms that they experienced. That's all. That's it. That's about it. Yeah. I've heard there's a couple stories that my kids have told me, and they've just been really innocent, and I've just had to turn my back and been like, what the fuck am I? Like, I'm almost brought to tears.
Location.
Everything else about it is incredible, right? Like you have the diversity of just students and parents and
citizenry,
whatever. It's cool. And I really believe that it's the right. They're learning just as much, and they're, if not more. In
the liberal bubbles here in New York.
Yeah, they are liberal, but you'll be surprised. It's not that liberal as well. There's lots of not liberal, and that's cool. What? That's cool.
Americans aren't just red and blue. We're purple too.
Look at you, like Grimace.
Just like Grimace.
Like Grimace.
You call me fat?
No, I'm calling
a lot of pudding.
A hamburger.
I've been eating a lot of pudding because if I collect enough pudding, I get frequent flyer miles and I get to go to Hawaii.
Oh, look at you. Reference is from Punch Drunk Love.
Look at you. The dude knows. Punch Drunk Love is a fucking great movie, by the way.
Yeah. And by the way, almost as good as Uncut Gems. Not almost as good. Better than Uncut Gems.
I agree.
But Uncut Gems was really it was frenetic. It was frenetic.
Yeah. It was. You leave that thing and you're just like, I have a headache. I'm super stressed out, but it was entertaining.
You know what? Just like this episode.
Yeah. That was actually, look at you. Put a little button on it. I appreciate that. We want to thank everybody for listening. If we didn't get to your comments, that's because we really couldn't understand them. You guys left some really sophisticated and intelligent comments, and we just wanted to talk about Bucknell and take a huge shit on Bucknell. All episode long. If you're from Bucknell, let me know.
No, you know what? If you're from Bucknell, congratulations to you.
I want to know. No, I want to know if you're from Bucknell. Justify the price tag. Okay, just saying. Give me what are some of the perks of Bucknell, and in exchange, I'll give you Pete's address so you can send him a bag of dog shit.
There you go.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving, one and all.
I prefer flaming if you send it.
So as always, you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, everywhere you get your podcast. Check out individual episodes and leave comments on YouTube if you want to see what we were wearing. Throw us some money on Anchor or Patreon. And please don't unsubscribe if you went to Bucknell. All in good fun. We really don't know anything about you except Pete knows a lot. He's been studying it. I don't know why, but nothing would be better if in like 5 years one of your kids goes to Bucknell. I hope I remember this.
That would be great. That would be beautiful.
It would. Poetic
All right,
justice.
Thanks everybody. We'll see you next time.
I don't know why you would still be watching This Isn't a Marvel Movie, no matter how much I look like Paul Rudd, which you can deny it all you want. It's there in the eyes, I think. I'm young looking like him. If you enjoyed the podcast, which you obviously did or you wouldn't be listening still, sign up on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you want to listen to. Comment here on YouTube, subscribe, hit that like button. We want to hear from you. Comments, questions, dirty jokes, money, all the money you can give us. We'd love it all. Catch you next time.